will be the last time you're on your own. Not the last time they'll be raising money, but the last time you're doing it on your own.
Right. What we're doing is we're here to officially close an era. 52 years of service to the community and 44 years of collecting for the Crusade for Children. It's kind of bittersweet, but we look forward to new and better things.
Right. And you'll still be out there collecting next year. You're just going to be under
yes.
a different name, which we'll clue you in on in a second.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I like to quote a lieutenant of ours, Jeff Abbott, who said, people will remain the same, the name will change.
Exactly.
So that's forthcoming.
Exactly. Yes, very wise.
All right, what I'd like to read off here is it's basically a dedication, and I call it 52 years of service. It says around 1951 to 52, which is recognized date of formation, a group of business owners and concerned citizens from the South Dixie area started a fire department. It was needed because the nearest fire department at the time was the Shively Fire Department, who when called respond to give aid to us. At the time of this, there was no Pleasure Ridge Park Fire Department. A fatal mishap happened one time while Shively was responding to us where they had a fatality. They wrecked a fire truck, lost some firefighters. So the business owners decided that they would like to form their own fire department out here, and this is basically where South Dixie started. The first fire truck was a converted Pepsi-Cola truck with a front-mounted pump and a water tank. Moon Mathis from the Shively Fire Department helped us start our gig going. The fire truck was parked at the old Robinson Brothers garage located at what is now called the Old Dixie Highway. It was parked outside the building. The city fire department captain helped the first firefighters with training. Fire dispatch was called in to Pace's garage. A little bit later, the Chisholm Lane building, which was the first South Dixie firehouse, it was built with donations from door to door and from fish fries. And as far back as anyone within the fire department can remember, our name has always been called South Dixie. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read names here. I know I will not be able to give everybody's name, their time of service, but we dedicate this to you, and if I forget anybody's name or fail to mention a name, please accept my deepest regrets. Now, here goes. George Abel, Danny Albritton, Jeff Abbott, James Ashby Jr., Don Always, G.E. Anderson, Richard Abbott, Gary Allen, Gary Albritton, Bob Allgood, Andy Anderson, James Allen, Red Beach, Vincent Bruner, Chuck Bruner, Stephen D. Burton, Noah Bryant, Renee Butterworth, Tina B-Rod, Tom Barrett, Frank Bell, Leroy Blair, Bill Brown, Kenneth Burchett, Randall Burton, Terry Boston, Don Boyce, Tony Bright, Joe Bowman, Roger Bohannon, Virgil Blakely, Mike Biddle, Lonnie Blevins, Stephen Burton II, Joe Bickett, Paul B. Rod, Josh Brown, Jim Burfield, Tracy Clark, Jimmy Clark, Donnie Cole, Tim Crane, James Crane, Stanley Colvin, Terry Compton, Tom Crane, James Crace, Ed Opie Curl, Dennis Carter, Danny Cole, Frank Ditto, Eric Duffy, Vicki Davis, Joe Drake, Vicki Dunn, Mike Durbin, Ernest Davis, Tommy Dunn, Joe Drake Jr., Greg Duffy, Gary Davis, Joe Dawson, Chuck Doherty, Jack N., Gail Ewing, Mike Ford, Regina Forbes, Dennis Brazell Sr., Steve Foster, Dwayne Forbes, Gerald French, Dennis Brazell Jr., Mark Fuquay, Lisa Forbes, Tony Ferris, John Ford, Ed Felker, Ronnie Good, Marcella Gooden, Jeremy Goodman, Roger Goins, Ray Gordon, Mark Greaser, Luke Gooden, Dave Grisby, Eugene Helm, Norman Hoagland Jr., Karen Fenwick Herms, W.G. Hudson, Lamar Hamilton, Norman Hoagland Sr., Leanne Hoagland, Paul Harrod, Jess Huggett, Larry Hoagland, Gary Hall, Mike Houghton, Travis Harrod, Stan Hulse, Robert Jackson, Dale Jackson, John Jupin, Pete Jacko, Fred Jupin, Doug Cobb, Marty Keys, Alton Knott, Gary Carews, Joe Kennedy, Gerald Kiefer, Glenn Kennedy, John Lickwall, Chuck Lee, Brent Lee, Bill Loden, Bill Lawrence, Charles Linker, Marty Lee, Ron Lancaster, Jason LeCompte, Ed Lawson, Charlie Lee, David Lee, Greg Linker, Jerry Lester, Don Milby, Terry Medley, Randall Meredith, Marcus McDowell, Rob Milliner, Bill Miller, Hayden Mudd, Terry Monroe, Brian McDonald, Richard Martin, a former chaplain, Chris McVeigh, Pat Rocky Marshall, Ronnie Mucker, David Musk, Troy Maynard, Bud Mitchell, John Miller, Roger Milliner, Robert Meredith, Scott Maddox, Danny Marvel, Gary Nelly, Chris Nelly, Mark Nellums, David Nelly Sr., Joe Newts, Angela Nelly, David Nelly Jr., Maggie Newts, Dee Nemo, Dave Ozzy Osborne, Gerald Oblitz, James Aller, Ed Aller, Joe Phillips, Don Pace, Ida Prather, Hardin Pace, Charles Peak, Larry Payne, Joe Padicka, I hope I pronounced that right. Pete Ridgway, who was our first chief. John Robinson, Charlie Remines, Archie Remines, James Rubel, Joe Reeder, Keith Reed, Aubrey Robertson, Rick Riley, Jake Rubel, John Robinson Jr., Brent Remines, Joe Rogers, Dave Ransard, Tommy Reeder, Bill Reeder, Shelby Rogers, who was our secretary for a long time, Keith Reed, Eugene Rowan, Mike Robinson, Troy Remines, Ken Rogers, Sam Roberts, Todd Rowe, Vestal Rogers, Tom Reeder, Sam Razor, Dave Scoggins, Donnie Snyder, Vincent Smith, who is our current chief, John Slinger, Justin Shar, Ronald Stennett, Linda Smith, Jim Smith II, Joe Schaefer, Glenn Sherrard, Bruce Spruill, Billy Smith, Christine Smalls, Michael Stewart, John Shaw, Joe Sweeney, Gene Sult, Doug Schmidt, Fred Snyder, Don Smith, Teddy Smith III, Butch Samples, Joe Schaefer, Stanley Shaw, Jim Smith, Jerome Skaggs, Clint Pappy Thompson, Clarence Thompson, Gary Toole Sr., Joe Taylor, Jerry Thompson, Roy Taylor, Tommy Talley, Jerry Thompson Jr., Gary Toole Jr., John Taylor, Dan Vanover, Ben Whitaker, Mary Wells, Carl Workmeister, Tom Weber, Joe Walker, Skip Workmeister, Dallas Wright, Derek Waters, Ernest Worston, Frank Wren, Joe Wells, Paul Wallace, Mike Weebrink, Dave Wilson, and Paul Wallace. These were the people who was part of 52 years of service. This is who we have dedicated our last crusade to, and closing the history of our department and getting ready to start the new chapter. Now,